Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or to everyone around the world, whatever time it is where you are. So here in the UK is just gonna go 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. I think now we're 5 hours ahead of Eastern time. You guys fell back overnight, I guess. Quite a few of you here already, about 30. Mario, you're a good man in the world of evil and chaos. Thank you for what you do. You're welcome, Pudenda. Thank you. No, he smashed the like button. No is one of my biggest cheerleaders. I appreciate that, No. Hi, Pad. Hi, Ad Hominin. And so Ray, the Truth, Money, and Freedom podcast. Timmy Chonga. Hi, Timmy Chonga. Nice to see you here. Timmy Chonga is a silver bug, I think, still, probably. Baffled Mind from Utah. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome for that message. I've never been to Utah, actually. Would like to go one day. Must be an interesting place. Lucas Razor. Hi, Lucas. Water Shambles. He's a regular. Jeff Brown. Greetings from Holland. Dutch partisan. He's a silver bug. Billy is not here tonight because this is the time of the year. 5th of November is Guy Fawkes, night. That was the guy who tried to burn up Parliament a few hundred years ago, and they have a lot of fireworks. So Billy gets a little bit distressed, so he's upstairs with my wife. He hasn't been himself the last couple of days, all the fireworks, so he won't be here today. Mike T, first time watching in the UK, normally in Australia, asleep for this. Also, you're visiting the UK, great. Pablo Pina from Ontario. Blue Smoke H1, the Butlers always had the best inside info back in the day. But I know nothing. Yeah, they probably did, didn't they? Because they were around their bosses who were pretty high up, and they listened to stuff. Also, I think in the day before Uber, when people used to have private chauffeurs, like the very wealthy, maybe they kind of listen in, and they know what's going on as well. A lot of times, I would say. Lulu 0462 from New York. Mike Spence from Spain. SW, hi SW. Pudenda getting the last bite of spaghetti. Yeah, Billy, he's all right. He's just a bit nervous with the fireworks. They were really bad last night. Tonight is not as bad, but he's still not. He earlier today I was here on my desk, and he actually ran into under my desk. I had to push him out because I couldn't put my feet under the desk. Yeah, the title of my video is about central banks helping speculators, right? And that it's going to end badly. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think the central banks, they're not creating all this money and credit or debt, expending their balance sheet. They're not doing to help the economies, because if the powers that be really wanted to help the economy, they would have let the system collapse in 2008. They would have done in Iceland, and things, I think, wouldn't be great now, but they would be a lot better. But a lot of their friends on Wall Street, a lot of politicians would have been out of a job. So I think it's just a scam. It's like a deception to keep talking about the fact that inflation needs to stay high, so to keep the economy going. I think it's just an excuse to keep pumping money into Wall Street. And that's why we're seeing all-time highs in the stock market. But I don't think it's going to become it's going to stay that easy for the speculators or the central banks. And I'll come back to that in a minute. Just see who's here now, who's coming on. When will hyperinflation kick in? Will Bank of England do QE? I think I was just reading about the Bank of England SW. They seem to be doing not much right now. They want to wait until the new date for Brexit, January 31st. So, but I just read that they're going to meet this week. They're not expected to cut, but they're expected to say that they don't expect rates to move up in the future. Now, their forward guidance, so they're expecting rates to stay low. So they've gone away from expecting higher rates as well. Hyperinflation, I guess that will happen when people lose confidence in central banks. That's when people get out of their paper currency. With all the uncertainty, the elections coming up, there's a lot of uncertainty politics-wise. The fact that Boris Johnson is going to run on a platform that will allow for only Brexit with a deal, I think it's quite divisive. It's going to break, I think, the Brexit vote and the conservative vote, and it could give Labour and the Lib Dems maybe the chance to even win the election, and that would be a spanner in the works, I think. Not that the Conservatives are any better, but yeah, keep an eye for that, in my opinion. And I think, Nigel Farage of the Brexit Party said that, yeah, Boris Johnson is Brino now, Brexit in name only. So he's not going to help the Conservatives, even though we've got about 5 weeks or 6 weeks to the election. There's a lot of time. There's a note saying about a week or a month is a long time in politics. So let's wait and see. So that's what I have to say about that. Yeah, Lucas, the fireworks last night were really loud. It it almost sounded like there were bombers overhead, like World War II. How do they keep inflation figures out of the news? Yeah, they just manipulated a lot lower. They changed about 20 years ago. They used to only publish RPI. RPI is higher than the CPI. And then they switch to the core number, which excludes food and energy. And if inflation goes up, they're measured. They say, oh, it was because of holiday prices went up, because the pound went down, which is complete rubbish, of course. And they blame profiteers for it instead of blaming the Bank of England, right? LFC, Liverpool Film Club. Hi, Tony. How are you? Mike T, did you watch Martin North's video on gold? Suggests another correction is coming for gold as major investors in the futures market dump their positions. No, I haven't watched that, no. I personally think gold is looking better right now. I did expect it to continue to move higher a couple weeks ago, but it came off. But I think it ended the week quite well technically. I did a video about it actually earlier today, if you want to watch it. I don't think he'd do much with it. I haven't heard him say he wants to abolish the BOE. I think he wouldn't be around for too long if he said that. All I've heard him say is that he wants to open maybe move the Bank of England to Birmingham or somewhere up north to make it more central, but that doesn't make any difference. They're still going to print the money. So I'm not political. I don't buy into the left-right paradigm. It's World War II, the political party that's created more debt when they were in power are actually the Conservatives, not Labor. So there you go. Trying to get all the questions here. There's quite a few people here already. Pablo Pina, yeah, it's a system based on faith and confidence. That's right. It's not before 1971. It was a system based on how much. If you had gold, you were fine. If it was money, right? But nowadays, it's based on people believing in the system, right? Faith and confidence. And when that how can I say, dissolves faith and confidence, it happens very quickly and it happens out of the blue. It's difficult to say. It's a non-linear event. Two-thirds of directors of the New York Fed are handpicked by the yeah, they're handpicked by the commercial banks in the district of the New York Fed, and that's the same for all the other 11 regional banks. They're all privately owned. The Federal Reserve banks, the 12 Federal Reserve banks. The only bank that's not is the Federal Reserve Board in Washington D.C. That's public. But I remember a few years ago, I think Alex Jones went to the Dallas Fed building to protest against the Fed, and actually there was a sign I think said "No trespassing private property." Right, so it's a private bank, the Dallas Fed. Parlando from Belgium. I haven't bought Aftermath. I did read the Mandibles. I recommend the Mandibles. Thoughts on China announcing 20,000 tons of gold? I think they're up to almost 2,000 now. There is speculation that they have a lot more gold than they're letting on. I don't know. It's just speculation. It would be quite a bombshell if they did come out and say that they have 20,000. Oh, yeah. So, as for the title of my live stream, I was saying that the central banks basically they're helping the speculators, they're helping Wall Street, they're helping the city of London, Frankfurt, the bankers, yeah, but I think the Fed is getting to a point where it's going to be tough for them to keep this deception going because right now we look at the charts of the stock market and we're breaking out new all-time highs in the Nasdaq, S&P, Dow is almost there, and then we have interest rate cut. Right now, the Fed funds target is 1.5 to 175. We've got core CPI at 2.4%. The PCE is at 2.2. So we've got negative real interest rates. So it doesn't make sense. People are going to start twigging onto it. Even people who don't think like we do. How can the Fed? How can things be so great and yields be dropping like they are, and the Fed cutting rates? Either rates are going to start rising again, or the stock market is going to come back down. But if rates start rising again, that's going to be bad for the stock market, and the Fed's going to have to come in and cut again. So that's the thing. I think they're getting really near to getting really cornered, and very blatantly and publicly. I think that people are going to start losing confidence in them. Even the people high up, the economists, central bankers themselves, individual central bankers, people who work for central bankers, economists, and we're starting to see that also in Europe a lot. Someone asked where Billy is. Yeah, Billy's upstairs. Right now here in England, we have a lot of fireworks being let off, and he's been a bit funny the last couple of days. He's a bit scared and nervous, so he's up in the bedroom with my wife. But he's all right. No, we didn't sell Billy. He's not for sale. SW, yeah, Donald Trump keeps saying that the U.S. economy is doing great. But I spoke in my a video a couple of days ago or so. You look here at the usdebtclock.org, which I think many of you know, than it was in 2000, back in 100,000. So I'm not sure where he sees this economy, this great economy. I think he's just playing along with the speculators in Wall Street. Yeah, he's trying to keep the house of cards from collapsing. That's all he's trying to do, I think. But it's not a great economy. The other thing I would say, you look at the national debt. We're almost at 107% of GDP. That's the highest ever in peacetime. The last time it was at that level was right at the end of World War II in 1946, and that was the top. Out well, the live stream, let me know, because it's saying here that my connection is unstable. Russell Branch says, great channel, providing a great education, financial matters. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, my background is in finance. I worked for almost, 25 years in finance. And yeah, I try to speak to you guys as I used to speak to my clients. My clients were institutional clients. What does that mean? Well, they're like professionals, like bankers, mutual fund managers, corporate treasurers, and people like that, other brokers as well. Russell Lachman, does the debt matter at all if Fed can print everybody out of debt? I guess it doesn't. Technically, the Fed can print as much as they want. They create money really out of thin air. There's no one really that's lending to the Fed, right? They just type it on their computer, on their keyboard. But what that does is that people are going to realize that the money is worthless if the Fed can keep buying all the debt. That's why the Fed, until 2008, had a relatively small balance sheet, only 800 billion, which is still a lot. National debt was around 10 trillion, right? But now they've got 4 trillion in their balance sheet. Yeah, they can keep printing, but you probably need $100 soon to buy a Big Mac meal at McDonald's. Are premium bonds safer than banks? Well, technically, they're guaranteed by the UK government. So, yeah, they are safer than banks. SW, how does the UK afford interest payments on the national debt? Well, because the Bank of England has manipulated the interest rates so low. The 10-year yield in the UK is less than 1%. And they do that. They manipulate those rates lower for that. So when they say that central banks are independent, they're not. They're actually scratching the politicians' back, and the politicians are scratching their back. Paul Nagel, China 303 debt. You mean debt, right? Debt to GDP. I think according to the World Debt Clock, let's have a look here. China debt to GDP, public debt to GDP is 63.3%. In the US, the public debt to GDP is 67%. So China does not have a 300% debt to GDP. And the 107% that the US has, that's the national debt to GDP. I think the public debt is lower there, 67, because it doesn't count all the debt that the Federal Reserve holds, right? They hold about 3 trillion in treasuries. So I don't think you're right about China having 303% debt to GDP. Hi, Lord Humongous. Billy is upstairs. He's scared of all the fireworks we have around this time of the year. So he's up in the bedroom, under the bed. SW, yeah, they probably are in talks to take over Lloyd's Bank. They're not doing well at all. Metro Bank. And they're supposed to be a challenger bank that were going to compete and challenge the old banks, but too bad, you know, they've gone bust basically. They would probably go bust if Lloyd's doesn't take over or someone else take over them. You know, the country that has very little national debt to GDP is Russia. Let's see. Russia has 18% debt to GDP. I guess we can see why Russia is so vilified, maybe, and why Japan isn't vilified. Japan's got 200% debt to GDP, so they're good debt slaves to Japanese. No offense to anyone who's Japanese here. SAC Media, what happened to Glint? Well, they're still under administration, so I know as much as you guys because the administrators, they keep quiet. I think they're trying to find investors to get out of the administration. I've got an old cup here. It's not from my Teespring store, but it did have End the Fed, but it's kind of erased. It's an End the Fed cup. Got some water. Sackling Bank. Well, it's one of these digital banks, isn't it? They're just the same. I wouldn't trust them that much. I wouldn't probably mind opening an account with them, but just keep enough money there to pay your bills, I would say. And the other thing I wanted to talk about with all the debit cards, credit cards, and I heard a story or read somewhere that in the subway in Russia, what people do, they buy these card readers that they have in shops, and in the crowded train, they take that and they bump into people, and they get people's cards. So I've got a wallet here I bought a few months ago, and that's protected, RFID protected. It's a bit thicker, but yeah, I recommend RFID protected. Russell Lutchman, yeah, I mean, the derivatives notional amount supposedly now is about 600 trillion, but it's probably a lot more than 1,000 trillion, like you say. Matter because they net out, but as we know, collapse, it mattered. Huge fails, the notional amount comes into play. Lord Humongous, yeah, I saw there is a bank in China that is in trouble, but banks go bust every week. Small banks. We'll have to see. Hong Kong is a different story, of course. A lot of protests there still. Oh yeah, Philippic Simonac. I'm wondering if you watched the Justinian. I haven't yet. I saw you commented that a few days ago. I need to watch that. I haven't had time. I'm gonna actually Google that Justinian deception. And I'm going to leave it here on my on another window. So when I finish here, I'll probably watch it. Thanks for reminding me. SW Trump said if he gets impeached, well, it could be because he's the one who's keeping probably the market souped up with the ESF, Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is run by his Treasury Secretary, right? So maybe that's a warning. Lord Humongous says big banks had glitches last week. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Capital One. Yeah, I watched a movie the other day on YouTube. I forgot what it was called, but it was The Last Days or something. It was about, I think there was a volcanic eruption stuck, and but they are showing people in Chicago, right? And electricity was turned off. Nothing was. Everyone just accepted cash, right? So when there's no electricity, if they pull the plug on the grid, cards are no good. That's why cash is important, paper cash. Also precious metals. I think also some junk silver. I've got my silver quarters here. I think that's important to have. People, I think, would accept that even here in the UK, even though these are the US. This one is what, 1964. I've got 64s all the way to 1941 silver quarters. I have some UK junk silver coins as well, pre 1920. They're like sterling silver. Does it keep dropping out? Yeah, there's nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. The US, it's not the USA that's going bankrupt, it's the Federal Reserve note, really. But of course, Uncle Sam owes a lot of people a lot of money, especially through the unfunded liabilities. I think it's up to almost 127 trillion. So if the Federal Reserve note implodes and goes down the tube, yes, the Fed can print it, but it's going to become worthless. A lot of people that are dependent on the Uncle Sam, they're not going to get anything. I think Billy wants to come in here. Come on, boy. Come on, up, 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 Bill, up. Get up, up. Come on. There you go. Yeah, Billy was knocking at the door. I'd shut the door to the study, and he was knocking, but now he's gone back down. Maybe he wants to go out. Anyway, Pablo Pina is asking a question here about 10-year bonds. If they go negative, the yields go negative. My question is, will there be a huge exit from the bond market? No. The thing with bonds, if the yields are going down, the prices are going up. So there's going to be speculators are going to be buying it. You can bet a lot of people are buying it now already, probably because the lower yields go on the 10-year, the prices go through the roof. We saw the Austrian 100-year bond. I think they were issued 18 months ago at 100. And I think the negative yields actually attracted the speculators because they make money on the capital part of it because the prices go through the roof. Lord Humongous, yeah, that's the term they use. I'm sorry, junk silver. Yeah, they're called constitutional money. You're right. Um, I don't understand why they call it junk silver, and I that's what I came to my mind. Wasn't trying to offend anyone. The repo funds, Truth Money, what they do, well, the repo funds just helps them fund their daily operations. And how do they? And they do that by, you see, because they're greedy. Let's say you and I have, let's say, $10,000 in treasury notes, right? 10-year treasury notes. We just leave that there to earn the interest, right? Even though it's not much. But what the banks do is they take that and they lend that out to have cash so they can buy something else to speculate in that. That's what they use the repo funds for. It's because they're greedy and they have to keep using their assets to earn even more than they're already earning. It's all about leverage and greed. And that's what they use the repo funds for. But it's also what keeps this credit bubble going, because I don't think the Fed would like to see banks not doing that because it would slow things down. And we know that in this system, they need to keep hitting their assets. Hopefully that helps, that answer. How healthy are the banks in Europe? They're not healthy at all. Everywhere around the world, they're not healthy. Probably the only places where they're maybe healthier are places we probably wouldn't want to go to, or places they tell us are horrible, right? Like I don't know, Iran. But there are no safe banks anywhere, I would say. Lord Humongous says he'd buy a super silver Billy round. Lucas Razor, if you were a first-time home buyer with a strong deposit, would you buy it now or try to time a sort of crash? No, I mean, 50% is a good amount. And if you're buying to as a home and not as an investment, I would do it. That's what I did about 22 years ago. I was in the same position, and I wasn't even thinking about the price at the time. So yeah, 50%. If you're going, a home is always a home, bricks and mortar. Even if prices go down 30%, you don't care, do you? Because you're living in the house. And if you want to move, other places will have gone down as well, so it doesn't matter. Pablo, when the dollar devalues, are bonds still attractive? Devalue in relation to other fiat currencies, maybe a little bit, but not really, because all the other fiat currencies are going down as well. Things are not really how they used to be nowadays. In the past, when currencies are weaker, yeah, their bonds would go down. Look at in the UK, the pound's gone down from 210 in 2008 or 2007 to 130 now, and gilts have gone up. The gilt prices have gone up, so it's crazy. So it's really difficult to say. But normally, in the normal world, they should. Mark W. Since numbers are infinite, could those financing from behind the scenes not simply keep things going indefinitely, keeping people stretched to the limit financially and enslaved? Sorry, just going to have a sip of water. What I would say to that, Mark, look at Zimbabwe. They tried that. Look what happened there. So right now, in the West, in the US and Europe, it's still working, but there will be a day when people lose confidence in it because they'll see that there's nothing behind it. And I think it's taking really long for people to realize it, but I think every day that goes by, we're getting closer to the point where people lose confidence. There's going to be a point as well where the consumer goes on strike, a little bit like Atlas Shrugged. I don't know if any of you have read that book. It's one of the books that I really loved, and I think and that would be not good for the system. Sanjit Niogi, I have an observation on you that you know very little outside UK, US, EU, and Brazil. All right. Why do you say that? I don't know. I mean, I cover most of my viewers are in those places. That's why I talk more about those places. I'm from Brazil, but I actually don't talk too much about Brazil here. I talk more about UK, US, and Europe. But I could cover Asia, India, China, but I don't know why you say that, but don't. Weird. Food prices, solar minimum, cosmic galaxy. Yeah, there are a lot of people who think that the climate is going to get colder, the solar minimum, it could affect prices. Fed's QE to infinity. Well, it affects the rest of the world because all the other major central banks are doing the same thing. They'll have to do the same thing. But it looks like the Fed is actually following the world now because they can't keep raising rates, the Fed, because the Europeans, they've gone back to QE. The Japanese are still, very accommodative. I saw Brazil is going to have to follow as well. It's just a race to bottom. Mark W., thank you for the super chat donation, £5. You're welcome. ETFs, Menyo Donahue, could you cover ETFs? Well, ETFs are just derivatives created by the bankers, and I wouldn't recommend them. So basically, let's say you want to buy a basket of technology stocks, Credit Suisse or UBS or JP Morgan, they will issue an ETF that says that you own those, but you actually don't. And when things don't go their way, they don't. ETFs can be very dangerous. So I would avoid ETFs. I would do my homework and try to buy individual stocks or bonds, because ETFs are they just package securities. That's all it is. It's like you buy a bag of, if you go to the sweet shop, you can pick each different sweet you want and put it in your bag, right? What ETFs do, they have someone that goes in the shop for you. It's an exchange traded fund. I don't recommend it for precious metals, especially because they don't really hold the physical gold in the gold ETF, nor the SLV. Idiots. Only approved questions get answered, right? Not sure what you mean, Blue Smoke. I'm trying to answer as many questions as I can. There's quite a few of you there. So that's all they are. You lend them money and they give you that's a certificate of deposit. There's like some deleted. Okay, great. Thanks. SW. Looks like there's a spammer or Project 7, tell me about New Zealand. Uh, what, what do you want to know about New Zealand? I mean, New Zealand is in the same boat as Australia, the UK, in terms of the financial situation, economic situation. They're they're following the same model, the fiat currency model. New Zealand. Yeah, the new Kiwi dollar made an all-time high. Gold made an all-time high in Kiwi dollar recently, and is going to keep doing the same thing. All fiat currencies, including the Kiwi dollar, they're all sinking against the precious metals. Russell Lutchman, altcoins. Altcoins, you need to do your homework. Very speculative. Sanjit Neogi, your message is repeated many times that buy gold and other precious metals, be your own boss and come out of the system. I have been doing this long time, even before I subscribed to a channel. Well, good for you, Sanjit. The thing is, the reason I keep repeating is that I get a lot of new subscribers, and yeah, that's my message, and I'm going to keep repeating it. So there you go. I try to diversify the videos, but yeah. What about Canadian Central Bank is a crown corporation? The one thing about Canada, early 70s, that was another thing. But yeah, Canada, I mean, you got the Canadian government doesn't hold any gold reserves, I don't think, or if they do, it's like 80 ounces, which is insignificant. But yeah, unfortunately, I think all the central banks are in the same. They're all the same. They're really. They might say that they're controlled by the crown or controlled by the nationalized, like here in the UK. But in the end of the day, I think it's the private bankers that control the central banks everywhere around the world. SAC Media, I've got an account with NatWest. I used to have an account with Citibank, but when I sold my house, my other house, and I bought this house, I had a bit of money in the extra. I was able to take some money out of my old house, and I had a fairly big amount in the bank about where from. And I told them I just sold my house and bought another house, and I was able to save some money. And they kept asking me that every 6 months. And I just closed my account with Citibank, and I had another account with NatWest. In Alaska, we get a dividend. My friend just lost his to Wells Fargo. He had a loan paid off years ago. General Stack, central banks have infinite fiat and can keep this going. Actually, most of the money and credit created in the system is created by the commercial banks, by the private banks. The only money that central banks fiat they create is actually to nowadays with QE to buy government debt, and there's a limit to how much government debt can be put into existence. So I don't know if it's we can keep that going for as long as you think. Look at Zimbabwe. Lucas Razor. No, I didn't watch that. I don't watch actually television. I only watch YouTube. Sometimes I will watch a bit of golf. I've got Now Pay for whenever I want, but I actually don't watch the BBC. So they repeated the Lehman. Always spooks me when the BBC talk about real financial world instead of ignoring as usual. Well, who knows? Remember that on 9/11, that BBC reporter said that Building 7 had collapsed and it was standing behind her? Well, because they had the script, right, for 9/11. Maybe they've got the script for the next financial collapse. Thank you, Lord Humongous. You have a good rest of the weekend as well. Thank you, Rumpelstiltskin. I think Friday, wasn't it? 1st of November. So I think tomorrow she's speaking in Berlin. I think it may be to the German parliament. I don't think the Germans really like her too much because she's going to continue printing money and keeping rates very low. I don't think the Germans are too much into that. Billy's here. He's on the floor. He's been a little bit nervous about the fire this time of the year here in the UK. I just want to show you as well something that I have. It's called a sterling silver wallet. So it's this thing here. So it's made out of sterling silver, and you open it and you can see that this is what people used to use here in the UK before World War I, basically before stopped redeeming gold, redeeming banknotes for gold. So you take your little sovereign and put it in the sterling wallet there, sterling, and you close it and you put it. They used to have the chains. Interesting thing as well. I want to show you. John Norris thought Billy was a cat. Well, I guess he's been sleeping a lot, right? And he should have had his haircut already, but the girl that does his grooming, she had a really serious operation about 8 weeks ago, and she can only do Billy on the 20th of November. So we might have to give him a bath soon. So that's why he's looking very fluffy like a cat. Joe Genereux, that's a French name, right? From Detroit. Hi, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Lord Humongous, they're quite hard to get, these little silver wallets. This is like over 100 years old. It's kind of like an antique. Maybe we could start making them again. You're right. Good idea. Answer Ray is going to buy some gold in the coming days. Usually buy sovereigns, but I'm thinking of a 100-gram bar for a change. Low premium too. Any thoughts? Well, if you're in the UK, the only thing I would say is that sovereigns are exempt from capital gains because sovereigns are legal tender. Gold bars are not, you don't pay any VAT, of course, or anything. But if you buy a lot of gold bars, for example, and the price goes through the roof, and you sell it and you declare it, which it's up to you, of course, you are liable to capital gains tax. But if you're only going to buy one, that's fine. But I've got some bars as well, mostly sovereigns though. Oh, I've got something else here. It's in it's really old box, and you pull it wide open. This is a sovereign scale. So this is what they use to weigh. If you put the sovereign here, oops. Well, anyway, you put the sovereign here, and it's supposed to touch the table, right? So you know it's the right weight. That's an old scale. So before digital, that's an antique as well. And here is for the half sovereign. John Norris, a cat that snores. Good night, Sanjit. God bless. I just need to open the door for Billy. 1 second. You want to go out? You go. Come on. Yeah, Billy was just asking to go out in the garden. So opening the door for him. All right. Ask you guys, and don't think I'm crazy or anything, but have any of you heard about the story about Seattle, 3rd of November? Because I've heard a little bit on the internet about that, but don't think anything will happen there. Just wonder if any of you guys have heard about that. Yeah, Billy buries his silver as well. He's got tons of silver out there. Mr. B said, yeah, Tony Ellis 311. I've seen some of that, and the game started, I think, about just under an hour ago, right? The Seahawks and the Buccaneers. So hopefully there will be nothing going on there exceptional. Yeah, Mr. B, I saw that events, right? Morgan, I think the same. The only reason I'm asking is because I personally think, I don't know if any of you remember Aaron Russo. Was it Aaron Russo, his name? He was the director of Trading Places. He made a documentary over 10 years ago entitled America from Freedom to Fascism. And he interviewed, I think, with Gerald Celente, Alex Jones, quite a few times. And he talks about how he was invited to join the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, and how he became friends with, I think his name was Lawrence Rockefeller, one of the Rockefellers. And the year before 9/11, Rockefeller told him that there was going to be a big event. So that's the only reason why I listen to these things, even though hopefully nothing will happen. Because if something does happen, at least I know it was engineered, and I think all these big events are engineered anyway. John Norris has 12 dogs. Wow, we've only got Billy. I think when I was little in Brazil, at one point, I think we had 4 dogs. That's the most dogs we had. Yeah, Tony Ellis, 5'11". Yes, that's on the Economist magazine. There's a 3'11", a 5'11", right? Lord Humongous says Seattle doesn't need a false flag. Entire West Coast is a toilet. Okay. Well, there's a lot of big companies in Seattle. Amazon, Boeing, and then you have Silicon Valley. We got YouTube, Google, Facebook. Yeah, William Birkenroad. Yeah, Isaac Newton. He did set the UK into a gold standard. I think it was 1707, if I'm not mistaken, or thereabouts, and it lasted until 1914. So it was a good system. It lasted 200 years. Rogue Dolphin heard of 9/11 in what's his a few months before as well. Bill Cooper. Humongous. The other thing I read today is that Bill Gates' old partner, the guy who co-founded Microsoft, was it Allen? Forgot his first name now. Paul Allen. He was in Epstein's little black book, and he apparently his Wikipedia says that he used to enjoy lavish parties, and that he made his guests sign non-disclosure agreements. So there you go. I think Paul Allen died a year ago. He owned the Seattle Seahawks, right? Yeah, I like reading about all this stuff. It's called conspiracy, right? Conspiracy theory, but I don't think it's conspiracy theory. A lot of it is the truth. uh, we know that it was the CIA who invented the term conspiracy theory to discredit people who were questioning their story about the JFK assassination, right? But the reason I don't go too much into that is because I want to stick to the money side of things to try to expose the monetary system. Because if we go after the monetary system, if I start a lot of the stuff that I've read for almost 20 years, David Icke and all this stuff, I would be taken off YouTube and I wouldn't be able to do what I do. But sometimes don't mind talking about it with you guys. Yes, Kirsten Strand, everything is planned. It's funny because even in high school, when I was at American school in Rio, I did a little research paper for history, and I did it on Pearl Harbor. And I took some books out of the library. The books actually said that the Americans knew that the Japanese were planning something. Even you read the books, and they say it that they almost kind of allowed them to do Pearl Harbor in order to convince Congress to declare war, you see? So there you go. OG thinks Bill Gates was placed there just like is placed on the global warming hoax now. I wouldn't put it past them. I like communist. Yeah, I mean, Lord Humongous, the other thing is that I think it was General Patton when they, after D-Day, he wanted to keep going to Berlin, right? And they kept stopping him. And I think it was Eisenhower didn't allow him to go to Berlin because FDR had a deal with Stalin for Stalin to take over half of Europe. So yeah, that was really bad, but that was planned as well. Yeah, and Dale, also about the Spanish American War, right? About the Havana, no, the Maine, right, and Havana Harbor. That and you learned that in school as well, but a lot of people don't want to believe in it. And what I learned in school about that was that it was yellow journalism. Yeah, and okay. So a night. It's a night here for me. I'd like to thank everyone who participated, everyone who contributed. Enjoyed all the questions and everything, and hopefully nothing will happen in Seattle today. Hopefully they'll have a good football game. I haven't followed football much. We don't really have football here in the UK. I think the NFL does play a few games here, but I just keep to golf now. I don't follow too many other sports. All right. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.